Hi, I'm Steve Pulvernis. I'm from London and having an exhibition here at Stour Space. I had my first camera at 5 years old, but it wasn't till almost 30 years ago I was living in Australia, and I came back to the UK and I was looking at some of my pictures and I was thinking, oh, these aren't too bad, and then started working in the industry. This is in the 90s, so it was all analogue. I ended up working for local newspapers and for music mags, and I specialised in gig photography, fancy bands, mainly around Camden. So in the 90s, there's about 60 venues in Camden, and it got to the point I was doing about 4 or 5 gigs a week in these tiny little venues. And then digital happened, and I never took to digital in the same way I was with analogue. So I do digital work, but analogue is where my heart is. I learned darkroom techniques at a college in London, Kingsway College. It's not there anymore, but it was fantastic because the college was in an old prison, and the basement was where all the old cells were. Every cell was a darkroom. So we had about 40 darkrooms to work. And I was heartbroken when they sold the building for development, because best college in the country for learning photography. And when I was working for one of the newspapers, I used to have to do all the darkroom work. And then in Sydney, in the early 2000s, I was working for a company called Sydney Darkroom, and within a month of joining them, I was doing all the printing. And the year I was there, I learned how to really print. So not only for myself, but in the end I was doing everybody's work in New South Wales. And then by 2003 the demand just went, because digital completely took over. And it's taken till about 4 or 5 years ago for the quality of digital to catch up. It's quite funny because analogue has come back at the same time as an art form, as I always knew it would. So came back to the UK after travelling the world for many years, 2 years ago, with a project in mind, and this is the project. I was visiting England in the summer of 2017, and I just knew what I wanted to do. So I thought, I'm not going to do it now, I'll come back in a year's time. So I came back in May 2018, bought myself a Hasselblad, which is a medium format analogue camera. And the whole idea was to take pictures of street art, and what better place than Hackney Wick. So I moved to Hackney Wick. It wasn't my specific intention to move here, but this is where I ended up. And then I noticed that my pictures just of street art were flat. I know there's a couple in the exhibition of some street art, but there was something missing. Pictures weren't anything special. So I realised I needed to put context, some depth. So then the architecture came in. So most of the pictures that we have here today are a mixture of street art and the architecture that goes around them. And so they tell a story with depth to it. And that works a lot better than just architecture or street art. And there's so much around here, and I was drawn to this area. I have very strong roots to this area. My dad's from this area. He was living here during the Blitz, so I've heard stories of what happened here, just a story. The first day of the Blitz, my dad was in Canning Town, hid in the basement, walked back to this side of Victoria Park where my dad was living, and my grandmother just assumed my father was dead because he was gone for about 5 minutes. He was what, 6 years old? So, I used to come here as a kid myself. One of my uncles was a bookmaker at the Hackney Docks, and on the way to football, yes, I'm a West Ham fan, I used to stop off at the Dogs on Saturday mornings for a couple of hours, and that would usually get me my entrance fee. So, that's where Here East is, how it's changed in all that time. So there's just so much here, and it's more vibrant, it's more real. I mean, I used to live in West London 30 years ago. That was great at the time. West London now is, I think, very little life. At the moment, there's a lot of life going on in South East London. I think that's where all the artists are going to end up going. A lot of people are heading towards the Tottenham area. But I've got a lot of vibrancy in South East London. So, because I'm here in East London, this is the area I'm concentrating. One of my friends, Jane, she saw the work I was doing and she recommended Nomadic Gardens. So I went there and I was just reel after reel after reel after reel. There was just so much to take photographs of. There's one picture, it's actually one of my favourites, of one of the pictures of one of the eyes with the ladder. Yeah, so basically I stuffed up with one of my films, took a picture of that picture, of that art, stuffed up my film, went back the next day, okay, stuffed up my film again, so went back a third time to take the picture, and that's where the ladder was there. And I think if I hadn't stuffed up my pictures, I wouldn't have taken that image, and it's one of my favourite images I've ever taken, so it's luck to have that. So there's so much there. And about a year ago I was watching a pretty bad remake of Tomb Raiders, and I noticed that the first opening scene was filmed at Nomadic Gardens. I went back to Nomadic Gardens, about 4 months ago, and it's flattened, it's completely gone. Completely destroyed it, so that was just before lockdown. We passed it, and it was just, yeah, it was very sad to see. So thank Jane for sending me to Nomadic Gardens. It was an amazing place. And just seeing people hanging there, playing music, or just the art that was there. I mean, I took a couple of hundred photos, only seeing about 10 in that area of this exhibition. And been coming to this area for most of my life. So even though I'm originally from North London, I have a personal and family connection here. Amazing to see how much it's changed. I've spent half my adult life living abroad, and so missed all the Olympics and all the build up to the Olympics. Then coming back to see what's happened, it's I must admit I do like it. I mean, it is going south with a bit too much redevelopment. So let's see where we are in 10 years. But yeah, I'm probably more optimistic than most people. But yeah, who knows where we'll be. Street art, always appreciated. Even like things as much as tags, if you're in a really, really hard area to get to, you can appreciate the effort that someone's going to make that tag. So I've always enjoyed street art, and in this area it's not considered as graffiti as vandalism. So ever-changing canvas, and wasn't much of that in the 80s. Very different, it's very bland. So to have that with all the old buildings and the new buildings and the contrast, and you go over the other side of that river, it's all brand new, it's all very shiny. And that's the other side of the stadium. Yeah, it's not my cup of tea. My thing with digital, an example being, so I used to have photographs in libraries, and they would be on slide film and 50 ISO, which means the grain on them is tiny, tiny, tiny. And I was employed by the Australian Museum for 18 months to go out and take wildlife photographs. And that all went a bit south because of digital taking over. But when you had a picture in the library, they would sell the image again and again and split the profits 50-50, and then by 2004, you'd sell a photograph for 50p. Yeah, it's like suddenly it wasn't worth it, and the quality of early digital was appalling. And the problem with early digital is it's all pixels, and when you have an analog image, it's all crystals, which are basically spherical. So when you zoom in, enlarged, it's a spherical object you're seeing, which blends into the the grain that's next to it. You get two pixels next to each other, it's ugly. You get two pieces of grain next to each other, it's atmospheric. There's a quality to it. And we are back there, we are at a stage with digital where you can get the quality. But the grain is something special. The grain, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the chemicals, it's silver halides. So a piece of silver, when exposed to light, it expands. So that's how you get the image on negatives and on paper. And it's a different quality to a digital image. So the grainy image is something I really do like. And that's my next project, to take everything on very grainy film. When I went out back in the darkroom, I had 2 films all ready to go. I've processed the films, I've not been able to print them. So these were all taken, I think it was the middle of March, so just before lockdown. So I haven't had a chance to develop those, but yeah, that's something different. So I was in Canary Wharf, taking lots of new architecture and lots of old, because there's still the dockyards there, and they've integrated some old architecture. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. Decided that I'll only make 10 copies maximum of any print. Each print I I'll do individually. So there's bound to be subtle differences, maybe a subtle difference in the framing, slightly in the contrast, maybe not, but in the development time as well. Bad practice, I don't take any notes in the darkroom, so I don't know exactly what I've done before. But I prefer it that way, because every time I go in, it's like working with a neat negative. So I don't know if people are familiar with something called dodging and burning. There's one image, in the Nomadic Gardens, the opera building. That was hard work, because the building itself was very, very, very dark. So I had to dodge lots of areas. So you're in the dark room, getting your hand, or holding it there, and holding your hand there, holding your hand there, and you've got a dodging tool there, and a burning tool there. Yeah. So if people order a lot of that one, that's going to be a lot of work. But yeah, so all the subtle differences. Most of these images took 2 or 3 prints to get it right first time. As I said, it's that paper I use is gorgeous. It's high-grade art paper, so it has a texture to it. And getting the tones out of that paper is more difficult than resin paper. Very easy with resin paper. It takes it's hard work. I had an exhibition in was it 1997? And that was, again, it was black and white imaging. I've had a look at my work recently, because it's when I'm just starting out, I look at it now and I'm going, I'm thinking, yeah, not quite the same. I think my work now is better. But yeah, that was all stuff taken at London Zoo. So I enjoyed that. But most of the work I've done over the years has been paid work, and rather than work for myself. So I'm usually commissioned to do work. And it was only now that I had the ability and the time to do stuff for me. It's the stuff I wanted to do, I wanted to capture it, because it spoke to me. It's the first time that's happened, apart from Outback Australia. But that's long slide film. That's all final wasteland. So, yeah.